Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for business leaders who are looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Now, my co host, the super CEO, Ted Fells, is not going to be joining us today. He is busy attending a conference. We wish him well. We wish him safe travels, but he is definitely missing a treat because today we're going to talk about simple strategies to eliminate anger before it eats you up. And this is a perspective that I haven't heard before on the topic of anger. Most people talk about anger management, and our guest today talks about anger elimination and emotions are real, understanding your emotions and really being able to uh, be in a right state. Those are just keys to your success. So this is definitely an episode to pay close attention to. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest. Our guest today, he's a board certified international medicine physician with a 40-year anger and stress, and he's a 40-year anger and stress elimination expert. He's only written 23 books on the topic, right? That's only 23 books on the topic of how to eliminate anger and stress without using drugs, relaxation exercises, or other traditional management techniques. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour, Dr. Mort Orman.
Well, Eric, thank you for having me and for having me speak to your audience. Happy to do this.
Yeah, that's. I remember when we talked a few months back, and I was just really intrigued by what you were saying because, like I said, I haven't heard that perspective, so I'm really looking forward to unpacking this. But I want to give everybody kind of the background perspective. So you started your career as just your typical internal medicine doctor.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
What was it that led you to focus on anger?
Well, I had in my 20s and 30s growing up, when I went through medical training and opened my practice, I had a lot of anger myself that I really wasn't able to control. And it was very frustrating. I also had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of relationship failures, one after another. And I was used to, succeeding at solving problems. And this was one area, around emotions, around relationships, where I just couldn't figure out how to succeed, where I was able to do that with most other things I had encountered in life. And then the other thing is being a doctor. As a doctor, we instantly see the patients in our practice who are more angry than the others, and we follow them over time, and we see what happens, and it was a pretty clear picture, even after only a few years in practice, that I saw that the angry people tended to have more illnesses. They had more strokes and heart attacks and high blood pressure, and that they would come in and tell me about their divorce or their business failure, or their kids won't talk to them, or they got addicted to something because they use substances to deal with their emotions and their anger. So I was sitting there with my own anger, seeing what happens to people when they have anger over time, and I said, I don't want to end up like that. And that kind of drove me into personal development work, which I did for a couple of years. And finally, I pieced things together from a couple different programs that I had been in. And I eventually figured out what was going on within me that enabled me to have a huge breakthrough in my ability to get rid of anger. I really understood for the first time how my brain was generating the anger I was feeling and that I couldn't control. And until I had those missing puzzle pieces, I really was at the mercy of my anger. I really couldn't do much about it. So that was the big breakthrough for me. And then once I cured my own anger and saw how actually it wasn't that hard to do once you understood what was going on, then I realized this was really important for people's health in general. As a physician, I wanted to get this out in the world, so more people could take advantage of it, because the more we can lower our anger levels, the better off we'll be, the healthier we'll be, the happier we'll be, the better we'll fare in our businesses and in our lives. So I saw the importance of it. And I also saw that most people weren't focused on the things that I eventually discovered, and they weren't teaching those things, which I think is a big failing of our education system.
So there's a lot of anger experts out there that
Mhm.
talk about emotions and anger. What is it that makes you different from everybody else?
Well, like you said, they mainly talk about managing anger. So once you have the anger, what can you do to keep it from being destructive, to keep it from harming your health or ruining your relationships or causing you to lose your job or something like that, where you lose your cool in the wrong situation. How do you communicate when you're angry? In better ways than not. And so there's all this advice on how to deal and manage anger once you have it. My focus is how about if you stop being angry in the first place?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be better? Then you don't have to worry about managing anything. It's just not there because you've gotten rid of it. And so that's what eventually was able to do. I went from being a very angry guy in my 20s and 30s, where I got triggered very easily by minor things, to a person who's had very little anger over the last 40 years. I completely got rid of most of my anger because I finally figured out what my brain was doing to make me angry. And it's invisible. We can't see what our brain's doing when it's doing it to us. So if you don't discover it or have somebody help you discover it, or listen to a podcast like this where I can share with you what's going on, you won't know, and then you can't really defend yourself. So hopefully I'll be able to share that information, what I learned, with people about where the anger actually comes from. That'll be very helpful to them.
Yeah, that we definitely want to unpack this, but I just really want to clarify this. So we have business leaders that watch and listen. So
Mhm.
they're either entrepreneurs or they're leaders, they're career professionals, but they lead people. And so, what do you see as the consequences for just having this unchecked chronic anger? You don't know what's triggering you, and you're just getting angry all the time. What do you see as the consequences?
Well, health consequences, definitely. As a physician, it has a big impact on our relationships. Our marriages break up. Our relationships with our kids can be damaged by a lot of anger. So relationships is a big consequence of having a lot of anger in your life. You can run into legal problems. I mean, you can end up in jail. You can end up dead. If you get into a road rage incident with somebody, you could get shot, you could get killed, you can get run over. Anger can lead to all kinds of horrible things. So it's now I make a distinction between wanted anger and unwanted anger.
Mm,
And I would think the vast majority of the anger we experience on a daily basis is anger we could do without. It's not really contributing anything into our life. It's actually harming us in a lot of ways. But there are occasions when anger can be good for us, can motivate us, can cause us to rise above some difficult situation, or create a movement or something, where we want to correct an injustice or something like that. So it's not that all anger is bad. It's just that I would say like 85-90% of the anger that we normally experience is harming us in many ways. It's harming us physically. It's harming us emotionally. It's also harming us like spiritually. I mean, when I was in my 20s and 30s and couldn't control my anger, I didn't feel very good about myself. I didn't feel very confident about myself because my anger had control over me and I didn't have control over it. So it kind of weakens your sense of self. And you don't feel good when you know that your emotions are dragging you around and they do what they want to you and you can't defend yourself. Um, so it has that cost as well. Yeah.
so I would think when we talk about wanted anger, like if you could somehow kind of channel your aggression, like if you're doing, like if you're competing in a sport,
Yeah, yeah,
you
that's a
know,
place. That's a great place where anger can be beneficial. And you've seen coaches use and leaders, business leaders will sometimes use anger to motivate their teams or their staff or something like that. But if you do it too much, if you're just a chronically angry leader, and you're going to turn off your people, you're going to have higher turnover rates. You're going to have a demoralized workforce. So it's going to have all kinds of negative ramifications. People are going to be afraid to tell you, how the impact you're having, the negative impact you're having on your organization, but you may be in fact having a negative impact if you're chronically angry. But strategically, if you use it in the right spots at the right times, it can be effective. And so coaches use it, players use it. If sometimes you're bringing up kids, there may be times when it's appropriate to be angry with your kids to reinforce a lesson, or have them remember something that's important. So, but again, going around being angry at them all the time for every little mistake that they make, that could cause problems for your kids if you do it too much.
Yeah, 'cause I think sometimes anger can establish boundaries for
It
people.
does. It is one of the things it does. It does. But there are other
Yeah,
ways to establish boundaries. I mean, you don't have to be angry to establish boundaries. You can just
yeah,
say, listen, this is not okay. We're not going to do this. I'm not going here, or you're not going there with me. So there are ways to do it where you don't have to have all the physiologic consequences of the anger or the social consequences of the anger, which often precipitates anger in the other people that you're interacting with.
yeah. And I got to a point later in my career where I could, you know, be confrontational with someone and not be angry.
Yes. Yes.
Where I'm established, and years ago, there's more. It was more of like an emotional type of
Yeah.
thing where I really would feel it, need to cool down, and all of that.
And wasn't it better? Wasn't it better when you were confrontational and direct and strong in your positioning, but you
Right.
weren't angry? It didn't. It was much easier to get a good outcome in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good takeaway that there's a difference between wanted and unwanted because some people, Dr. Mort, are very literal. So if we don't clarify this at the beginning, they're like, oh, you know what? I've got to get rid of all anger at all costs. I just need to be a doormat. If
Yeah.
somebody
Nope.
crosses the respect
Nope. It's not.
line,
Nope. It's only about when you're having anger you don't want to have, or when
yes,
it's causing problems in your life. That's where you need to understand it better so you can get rid of that kind of anger when you want to. And that's what I like to encourage and teach people actually how to do.
yeah, good. So yeah, I was doing some research
Hmm.
for this episode, and I listened to you on some other podcasts.
Hmm.
And one of the things I heard you say that I really want to talk about is that we don't see life the way it actually is. We see it through a set of filters.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this is something that this is what our brains do all the time, and they've been doing it for millions of years. I mean, if you go all the way back to prehistoric time, very early in the game for human beings, our brains realized that there's just too much information coming in through our senses. If you count the actual data bits that are out there in the world that are impinging on our senses, it's just too much for the brain to handle. So the brain, very early on, developed the ability to kind of filter things out and chunk things down, simplify things, and focus on only those things that were important for our survival or for whatever we were working on or trying to accomplish. So the brain will delete a lot of stuff. It will focus on only those things that it thinks are important for you. And so we're never really seeing the world as it actually is because our brains has already pre-filtered it before we see it or feel it or experience it. It's given us a toned down view, a simplified view of whatever's going on so that we can make decisions quickly and do the things that we need to do. So brains have been doing that for millions of years, all right, or hundreds of thousands of years for human beings. So his brain's always filtering things. So for example, if you were bit by a dog when you were 3 years old, you're going to probably grow up with a dogs are dangerous filter.
Mm,
And every time a dog comes into your view, it's going to make you anxious because your brain's going to tell you that dog's going to bite you or might bite you. Okay, that's just what brains do. So all of our emotions come from a set of filters that our brain's using. It's usually just a couple simple filters kind of stacked up together. And and each emotion has its own like footprint and has its own set of filters. And for anger, there's three.
mm,
There's three for anxiety. There's three for guilt. Each emotion has its own. But for anger, it's three simple filters. And the first one is that when we're looking at the world and our brain is telling us, look at it this way. Somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. So there's like a negative judgment about something that somebody did. That's the first filter. The second filter is that we perceive that there was hurt or harm or potential hurt and harm for somebody or something that we care about. Could be us, could be a possession of ours, could be the planet, could be anything. But somebody did something bad and wrong is number one. There was hurt and harm or negative impact, number two. And then the third filter is a filter of blame. But it's a very special blame filter. It's very narrow. It's very filtered. Okay. I call it, pardon me. I call it unilateral blame. Just getting over a cold. I call it unilateral blame. So it's like we have horse blinders on
mm.
and we can only see what that person did or didn't do. We can't see any other causes that might have been involved. Even if they're there, our brain will filter them out. So we get this very distorted view of exactly what happened and how it happened. And that, when we believe those three filters, our body reacts with anger. It sends out the hormones and the chemicals and neurotransmitters and all the stuff that people smarter than me can tell you what happens when the chemical reactions in the body occur with anger. But the point is, it always comes from these three filters. So it doesn't matter what triggered you, and different people be triggered by different things. Something may trigger you to get angry, it wouldn't trigger me. Something may trigger me, wouldn't trigger you. Whatever it is that triggers us, the reason we get angry is because our brain activates these same three filters, no matter what the external trigger is. It's always the same. In human beings, anger always comes from these three filters, no matter what's the external precipitant of it. So those three filters are usually invisible when we're angry. We don't see them. We don't realize our brain is feeding us those three perspectives and telling us they're true. All right. But that's where your anger is coming from. And once you know that, and I would suggest that people listening to this write those three filters down. You only need 6 words to capture them. One, the first 2 are bad and wrong, then negative impact, and then unilateral blame. When you write those 3 things down on a sticky note or an index card or on your cell phone, every time from now on you get angry, you will know exactly what your brain is doing to make you angry. It's telling you to believe those 3 things about whatever was going on outside of you.
So going back to your early days when you said that you would be so which of these filters were really impacting you and causing your anger?
All 3 of them. You have to have all 3 of them.
Oh, so all 3 cause.
Yeah, you don't get angry unless all 3. Your brain gives you all 3 of these filters and tells you they're all true. So every time I was angry, and I was angry a lot in my 20s and 30s, but every time I got angry, my brain was telling me that somebody was doing something bad and wrong, somebody was hurt and harmed, negatively impacted, and somebody was unilaterally responsible or to blame. I would get angry at myself a lot if I didn't live up to whatever expectations I had. And it was for those 3 filters. I was looking at myself as doing something bad and wrong, that I hurt myself or hurt my future goals or future aspirations or whatever, and that I was to blame totally. So whether you're angry at yourself or you're angry at your computer or you're angry at or anybody else in your life, your partner, your kids, it's always because you're looking through, your brain is telling you to look through these 3 filters and to believe that they're all true. So all 3 of them were operating, but I didn't have any awareness back in my 20s and 30s when I was struggling. What can I do about my anger? How can I stop all this anger? I didn't know about that. It was how my brain was doing it. Because again, you can't see it. So until I went through enough, personal development work where I pieced some of this together, I went, oh, now I see it. Now I know what's going on. And that's what I've been teaching people how to do for the last 40 years. The first step is to understand where your anger is coming from, which is what we're talking about right now. The second step is then to start questioning whether the 3 things your brain is telling you are actually true or not. And guess what? A lot of the times, if you do that and you're honest, you'll find out they're not all true. Now, some of them might be true, but usually one of them or more is going to be faulty in some way. Something's going to have left out. Remember, it all comes from filtering. So from the get-go, things are left out. We know that for a fact because it all comes from brain filtering. And part of brain filtering is stuff gets left out and stuff gets allowed in. So brain's always leaving stuff out. So it's very likely that one or more of those 3 filters it's presenting to you and telling you to believe in is going to be faulty in some way that you won't see initially. It won't come to you automatically at first, but when you start digging in and asking yourself, I wonder if, did they really do something bad and wrong? Was somebody really hurt and harmed and negatively impacted? And if so, how big a hurt and harm was it? And were they really 100% responsible or blame? Does that mean I didn't have anything to do with it? Nobody else had anything to do with it? No other factors played a role? You start asking those questions and you'll start to see that, oh, my brain didn't give me the whole picture here. They didn't give me the whole story. And if I'd have seen it a little differently when it happened, I might not have had the anger that I reacted with.
So, for example, like I have a friend, and for whatever reason, like he gets angry in traffic. Like
There's not.
traffic is one of his things. Right?
You
Like
don't have to say. You don't have to say for whatever reason anymore. It's for the reason now.
right, right. Well, for
He's
the
looking
three
at things.
reasons.
He's looking at things through those three filters that his brain is giving them, and he doesn't realize that that's what's going on. So whatever's happening in traffic, he's judging it as other drivers are doing bad and wrong things. All right. Or maybe it's the city and they didn't post the construction he ran into, or that slowed him down, or whatever. Somebody's doing something bad and wrong. Somebody's being negative impact. He's being negatively impacted. He can't go where he wants to go as fast as he wants to get there, or arrive on time like he wants to. And somebody else is always to blame. He didn't have anything to do with it. Not to mention the fact that he didn't check traffic reports before he left the house.
Yeah.
He might have been speeding when somebody was, going slow in front of him. Oh, there's all kinds of ways in which he could have been playing a role where he's upset at other people or other situations where he doesn't see, or his brain doesn't let him see that he was part of the story. And it filters that out, and then it just blames the other people. What he just sees what they're doing, and he thinks that's the whole story, so he gets angry.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated why two people can experience that same situation. Like like I'm at a point now where it's just like, okay, it's just not that serious. Yeah, it's I can see how I can be bothered, but it's just not that serious. But other people.
Well, that's another way we know that the filtering is happening, because everybody's had that experience. You can be standing next to a friend or a family member. You both see the same event, whatever it was. One of you gets one emotion, the other one gets either no emotion or a different emotion. So it can't be directly the event. It has to be how we're each filtering it. And again, we don't see it. We don't see the filtering. Our brain's just doing it automatically. But that's what's actually causing the emotion, not the event. So we all intuitively know. We all intuitively know that filtering is going on, and that what I just told you is true because we've had the experience. That we don't see, we don't have the same emotions that other people always have with watching the same event.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what are some of the typical steps that people go through when they go from 0 to angry?
It happens. It goes like that. It goes faster than a Ferrari. It happens automatically. It's just, your brain is just knee jerk. It's just, you're already conditioned to look at it that way. Your brain is, and it just happens. When I was young and in practice, I would get angry at my patients when they would make a bad decision, do something stupid that would affect their health, or when they wouldn't follow my advice that I would, spent years learning to give them, and I give them great advice, and they would go off and do their own thing and end up in trouble, and as soon as I learned about it, I would just immediately, react with anger. And again, I couldn't control it, but it happens in a split second. You can't really stop it once it's conditioned. It's going to go for a while. Even when you start waking up to what we're talking about today, and you start practicing with, let me investigate each anger episode I have, and let me see if these filters are true or not, where you'll find a lot of them aren't, almost every time that you're angry, and one of them more of this. But until you do that for a good while and get some personal experience with it, you'll still get angry. You'll still get triggered automatically. And you won't be able to stop it but like you said, in your case, you had, over years, you changed your view of the world,
right?
And that changed how much anger you had. When you saw the world differently, you didn't react angry like you did when you were younger, because you had different perspectives that you accumulated as you matured. And you can do the same thing when you do this work of questioning your automatic brain filters. When you start digging in and questioning them, and you do it over time, and I'm talking about many, many, many times over months, maybe a year or more, then things will start showing up for you differently, and you won't react as angrily because you're seeing them differently. You're understanding them differently.
Yeah.
You're not always buying what your brain is selling. You realize your brain is tricking you a lot of the times. And once you get hip to that, and you start to see it in action in your own head, in your own life, then you get suspicious when your brain starts making you angry. You go like, I wonder if it's tricking me again. I don't know how. I don't know how it's doing it yet, but I'll bet it is. And then you start asking the questions, you start digging in, you go, oh, there's where it tricked me. There's where it told me something was true that really wasn't true. And now I see the difference. And then you just get wiser and wiser over time, and you get less and less angry. So like I
Yeah,
said,
man.
after about a year and a half of doing this back 40 years ago, I literally went from getting angry frequently at the drop of a dime to it was very difficult to make me angry, because it was very hard to get me to see things in a way that would make me angry anymore, because I had done all that work, and I had changed my view of the world and my view of the three filters that my brain kept sending me, to where I realized they weren't true most of the time.
Yeah, and I think we talked about filters, but I think for me, and you can maybe speak to this, like it helps for me to know what triggers me
Hmm.
and kind of see patterns. Like, cause I can relate, like, yeah, as I coach people, there's certain things that a client could do that could trigger me.
Yeah.
Even something as simple like I remember years ago would be like if I advised them to do something and they just wouldn't do it, but then they would hear it from someone else, and all of a sudden now it's the greatest idea they've ever heard in their life.
Yes.
It's like okay,
Yes.
but be it so. What's helped me is coming like now. I just something like that were to happen. It's like okay, right, yeah, but
That
I,
happened. That happens. You can't
right,
avoid that from happening. But in the earlier days when it was more triggering, it's like they're doing
right,
something bad by not acknowledging you were the one that gave them the idea in the first place, and by doing they did something wrong by not accepting the idea when you gave it to them. So it took them a lot longer before they agreed that it was a good idea, and then they attributed it to somebody else. So that's a negative impact on you. So you didn't get the
hmm
credit. You didn't you tried to help them, and they blocked you from helping them. So you were negatively impacted, and they
yep.
were totally to blame for being unreceptive to the great stuff you had to offer them. And then they finally came around and saw it was great stuff, took it from somebody else, and benefited. And then they could have done that from you earlier on.
So it sounds like the solution to eliminating anger is just going back through the three filters. What is the somebody doing wrong, who's
Bad or
being
wrong.
harmed, what's the blame. So really kind of walking through that
Yeah.
is
Now
really
it's
the
going to be hard.
solution.
It's hard to do when you're in the middle of an anger episode. When you get
Yeah.
triggered, you may not be able to remember this right away. But whenever you can, you're by yourself and the episode is over, you pull out that index card or whatever you wrote the three things down on, three filters down on, and then you remind yourself, okay, if I was angry, that means I had to have been looking through these three filters. It's 100%. You can go to the bank. It's always going to be you're looking through those three filters. But so that'll show you why you are angry. But now the hard part is now I need to start questioning those three filters and see where I can find flaws in them. It's almost like you pretend you're a lawyer and you're arguing the other side, of the whatever the situation is, which lawyers do. That's when they
Was
get
that the
trained to do that.
Socratic method or something
They
that
get trained.
they
Yeah,
call it?
they'll
Yeah,
argue.
yeah.
They'll argue one side of a case, and then they'll flip around and say, "Okay, now
Right.
I'm going to argue for the other side." That's what you literally have to do. Your brain's arguing for one view or three views, and you have to argue with your brain about, well, wait a second, what if that's not the whole story? What if you left out important evidence or important information or important perspectives? And usually your brain will, because remember, that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to leave things out, simplify things, and only give you what it thinks you need.
Yeah. I mean, I just think this is a unmonitored peak performance thing because I don't think you can perform at your best if your emotions are just out of control.
Yeah. And by the way, if you understand this anger mechanism as we're talking about here, it's the same for all the other emotions that can interfere with our performance. Worry, guilt, um, anxiety. They all have their own set of three simple filters, and they're frequently false filters.
Hmm
So our emotions are frequently coming from fake news. Basically, our brain is generating fake news, and we're
Yep.
buying it, and that's where our emotions come from. And then those emotions hold us back in whatever we want to accomplish or perform at.
And you mentioned it earlier, and I mean I've seen studies here recently that a lot of the illnesses, even like cancer and some of these other things, can be triggered by emotions that
Yeah,
we
it can
don't
affect
have.
our immune system, which protects us
Right.
from all kinds of bad stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And not to mention, pouring out hormones that are very stimulative and stimulate your
Yep.
blood pressure and your heart rate and put other stress and strain on your body. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Pardon me.
So you've written 23 books on the topic.
Yeah, I got 3 more in the works on road rage. I'm working on right now.
Oh man. I think your road rage may be a bestseller. And that's such a
Yep.
common thing.
Yep.
So like if you could recommend one of your 23 books, you can only recommend one to help somebody eliminate anger. Which one would you direct them to?
Well, the best one is one I recently published in April of this year called Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure. And it goes into more detail about everything we've been talking about today. And it shows you what to do with those 3 filters, how to use them, how to interrogate them, and how to see through whatever falsehoods are in there. And you can get that on Amazon. It's Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure. And that's the best book I know of on anger that's out there. And again, it's not anger management at all. It's not about deep breathing or punching a punching bag or running 5 miles. It's about, can you understand what your brain's doing? You understand how it's tricking you often when you're angry, and do you know how to defend yourself against what it's doing?
So do you find that most people can just take your book and just apply what you say and then start to eliminate anger, or does it require you or someone else getting involved to kind of help make sure that they're staying in line?
It's about 50-50. I mean, you can pick up, because basically I wrote the book based on a 10-session coaching program that I've been running for a number of years, where I take people through 10 sessions, and by the end of the 10 sessions, they're completely changed with regard to their anger issues. So I put everything in the book that I teach in that program. The only thing I couldn't do is go through individual circumstances. If you tell me you're angry, you got angry yesterday about X, I can't, in the book, I can't work through that with you, but I can give you general principles of how to do it and show you how to do it and give you examples, right? But so yeah, you can pick up the book and all the principles are there, the strategies are there, the methodology is there, and you can just use that as a guide and implement it. And it takes some practice. But then on the other hand, if you're having difficulty seeing through some of the filters and what might be wrong with them, it might take a little coaching to give you some experience in how to do that and how to work through those situations where your brain may be tricking you and you can't figure your way out of it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You can also just ask other people in your life to give you some suggestions for where your brain might be tricking, because you can say, I'm looking at it this way, this way, and this way. Do you see any ways that anything I'm missing here? Do you see any facts that I might be ignoring or not seeing, or truths that I'm not seeing? And from their perspective, they might be able to help you. So you don't always need professional coaching, but sometimes the eyes of another person can be very helpful, because seeing what you don't see.
Yeah, because I just think we all have blind spots.
Yes,
right, and I think it's helpful to have a trusted person.
Yes, and that's in essence, to me, that's what good coaching is. A good coach sees stuff that you're not seeing about your performance or yourself. If you're a hitting coach in baseball, you don't know where your elbow is when the ball's coming at you 90 miles an hour. But coach videotaping you and analyzing your mechanics can say, hey, you're dropping your elbow here, and and that's why you're whiffing.
And you're like, no, I'm not. Then you look at the video, and sure enough.
Yeah. So that's what good coaching is, really seeing what you don't, seeing into where you have blind spots, and then revealing to you what's in your blind spots so that you can make the corrections you need to make. Then maybe helping you make the corrections too. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're the anger doctor, right? We're just going to address the elephant in the room. This is what everybody wants to know. As the anger doctor, when was the last time that you got angry, and how did you work that out? What did you do to eliminate it?
Like I said, I don't get angry that much anymore. But when I do, the interesting thing is, I do occasionally get angry. I do occasionally get triggered. But I know this. I know these 3 filters so well now, and I've gone through them so many times that within a matter of minutes, I can see through whatever the filters are misleading me about. So if I do get angry, I don't stay angry for more than 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It's gone. because I know, okay, all right, three filters, okay, this one's wrong. Okay, I got no reason to be angry about that. And it happened, I can now do it very, very quickly. And that's one of the benefits of this approach. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the faster you get at it, the more you can bring it to bear, very close to the moment when you get triggered. Um, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, my wife and I just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. That would not have happened, I guarantee you, had I not figured this out 40 years ago before I met her. Because all my other relationships up to that point had failed because I didn't understand these three filters and what to do about them. So it's been a real blessing in my life, and like I said, I've had very little anger during the last 40 years, and if it comes, it doesn't last very long. I never have anger that lasts for days or weeks or years or anything like that. It's gone pretty quickly because I know how to figure out what my brain is doing to me.
Okay. And what are your thoughts as far as meditation helping you to?
Meditation is great. I think it relaxes you when you're doing it, and it retrains your brain a little bit. It just makes you sort of dissociate a little bit from your thoughts instead of being sucked into them, in a big way. So it gives you a little space there where you can question your thoughts and question your brain's activity. So it's a very good discipline for that. It makes it easier to do this process we're talking about, because you've practiced just letting your thoughts just go through and not get attached to them, not give them a lot of significance, just let them float through as you're doing your meditation, which is one of the things of meditation. So meditation's good. It has lots of benefits. Yeah. But if you do meditation and you combine it with knowing the three filters, that's even better. If you don't know the three filters, meditation alone is going to be maybe 10% effective in dealing with anger. But if you have to add the three filters, it goes up to like 90%.
Mm. Yeah, I just know it's been helpful for me.
Oh yeah,
As far as when you
I mean,
start.
most of the anger management techniques are good techniques. I mean, they're
Yeah,
beneficial, they're
yeah,
helpful. They just don't get at what we're talking about today. They don't
right.
help you understand where your anger is coming from. They don't give you the tools to stop being an angry person.
And as we know, those tools are those filters.
Yep.
There you go. Now, I think this is good because when you constantly repeat it, I think that's when people start to really get it,
Yep.
and it really sinks in. So I think this has just been an excellent episode. We're at towards the end where we're doing a segment. It's called "Write This Down." So this is where both you and I will give at least one idea from today's episode that the people need to write down so they can level up. So, Dr. Mort, we'll start with you.
Well, I've already
What do the
given it.
people
I've
need to
given
write
it, but
down?
I'll give it again. Write down these 6 words on an index card or a sticky note or something where you
Okay.
can retrieve it. Bad, wrong, negative impact, unilateral blame. Use that as a cheat sheet of what your brain's doing to make you angry whenever you get angry. Keep it somewhere where you can get your hands on it when you get angry and if something triggers you. Pull it out and remind yourself, okay, this is why I'm angry. This is what my brain's telling me to make me angry. And now it goes from invisible to visible. And then you can start working with it and questioning it if you want to.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Write that down. So my final thought is just about, just that self awareness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just how critical that is. And I think you have to, for this to help you, for this episode to help you, you have to have a level of awareness that this is an issue, right? Some people, you might not think that you may think anger is a good thing. But I think it helps to get to that point where you realize that chronic anger, especially, is just not healthy.
Yes.
And you have to see that it's a problem that needs to be overcome.
Yep.
So, and then once
I
you
agree.
get to that, yeah, and once you get to that point, then yeah, you can use the tools that Dr. Moore has eloquently laid out during this episode to
Yeah,
ultimately,
but I agree. If you're walking around with a lot of anger and you're going like, oh, well, I don't have an anger problem. What are you talking
right.
about? Then you're not going to be interested in any tools that come your way, even if they're the greatest tools in the world. You
Right.
know? Yeah.
So and then something can be affecting you negatively that you're not aware of, right? You're
Yes.
wondering why you can't keep employees. You're wondering why you're not getting the contract. You're wondering
Yeah.
why your kids don't want to talk. I mean, so just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean that it's not having a negative effect on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, no, this has been a great episode. And that's where coaching comes in and having somebody who's able to look at you objectively and see your blind spots uh, can really be
Yeah.
helpful.
I've had people I've worked with and said, I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not really all that angry. And I said, well, do you ever look at situations in these three ways? And they would go, "Oh yeah, all the time." I said, "Well, then you're not allowing yourself to feel the anger, but your body's angry. If we have instruments on your body measuring your physiology, it would be going off, with 5-star alarms, that you're angry inside. You just have trained yourself not for whatever reason. You may grew up in a family where you weren't allowed to be angry, or where it was dangerous to be angry, so you trained yourself to not feel it. But if you're looking at things through those three filters, you're going to be angry. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's interesting. Like in certain things, like certain aspects of coaching, right? Anger is considered like a badge of honor that to be effective, you've got to be the person who yells and screams and throws chairs to get people to move. And I've found that to not be the case. Like I know people who literally can talk to you just like you and I are talking and they get great results. They get people to move. That
Yeah.
people feel accountable. So I think that's some of it, right? That sometimes we think that you have to be that, especially even if you're leading people, that you have to be the Bobby Knight who used to coach Indiana. You have to be that person that yells and screams to get results. That's not the
Yes.
case.
Right. Now, some people get locked into a way of being that's all
Mhm.
they know, and that they think that's the only thing that'll work, and then they'll do it. But you're right. There are other people who can be in that same situation who can get just as good or better results without resorting to anger as the motivator.
It is like the coach in football, Tony Dungy. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
Like literally anybody that played for him will say he's never raised their voice at him.
Hmm.
But he was so effective that people didn't want to let him down.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just like, oh man, I feel like I just yeah. But he never yelled, like didn't curse, didn't yell. So I think that's you know
Yeah.
it's easy to fall into that bad pattern if you're not
Yeah.
aware of
Yeah.
that. Okay, Dr.
Yeah.
Mort. So
Yeah.
how can people best connect with you?
Oh, there's two ways, two best ways to connect with me. One, you can go to my website, which is docorman.com, DOCORMAN.com. And the other way is I've got a free handout, if anyone wants to get it. It's called The Best Anger Elimination Method You Can Find. It goes into more detail about some of the things we've been talking about today. It talks about the 10-session coaching program that I did for a number of years, and a little bit about my book. And you can get that by going to theangersolution.org, O-R-G, theangersolution.org, and you can download that for free and also get you on my email list. And I send out emails every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you can correspond with me that way. So those are the two best ways to be in touch with me.
TheAngerSolution.org.
Yes,
Perfect. So well, make sure we have that in the show notes so people can get that free resource. And by the way, thank you for offering that
sure.
to our followers. And thank you for all the value you provided. I think this could be life changing for people if
Yep.
they really embrace it.
Yep.
Um, and then speaking of sharing, those of you that are watching and listening, don't forget to share the show. There's somebody you know that needs to eliminate anger. Share this episode with them, and I'm sure they won't get angry with you for sharing it. There you go. If they do, they can just work through the filters, right?
That'll be their first episode to practice on.
Right? They can practice by working through the filters. All right, we're good. And don't forget, you can access 30-minute hour. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those podcasting platforms. You can subscribe or follow, and that way you never miss a future episode. That's our time for this week's episode. We certainly want to thank Dr. Mort Orman once again for everything he shared. And until next time, have a great one.